I'm sure your contribution will make a good impact on our report, leave us with some good things to think about. So what I'll do is I'll hand over to you. You know how this all runs.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll do my 3 personal submissions, then 2 from the facts, plus I have a couple of new ideas that I'd like to throw in the mix.
Yep, happy with that.
Now I need to screen share, so I think you need to enable that at your end.
Yep.
So you should be able to see my PowerPoint presentation.
Yep, I can see the PowerPoint and I've got you in the corner.
Fantastic. I'll just make a start. So I'm going to go with the 3 that I did personally for a start. Some of you may have read my submission. For those that haven't, I'll make a big visual pie chart. This is of how many people want this lowered from 18 to 16. This is a New Zealand Herald Dynata poll. It's the best one I know of, 1,000 people. And an overwhelming majority, 79%, do not want the voting age lowered, including 69% of people who have just been that age. So as you know, as politicians, it's very rare to get 80% or a 4-to-1 ratio supporting or opposing anything. My message to those on the committee, to any political parties that are still trying to push for this age to be lowered, is that this is an unpopular policy. It is not the wishes of the people. We have limited resources, so let's please focus on the bigger issues. If you do still believe the voting age should be lowered as a political party or individual, please seek a mandate for change, either in your party policy running into an election, a referendum, or some really robust polling that shows that this polling is not correct. Secondly, this popped up on my father's iPad on election morning. This is on Stuff. He opened up Stuff and there's a huge big Labour ad. I'm not picking on you, Labour, it's just an example that came up and it is Stuff's fault. I was very disappointed with the Electoral Commission. They brushed this aside as a non-issue. And I just felt that they didn't take it seriously at all. This is a serious issue. I didn't feel they were impartial. It raises the question of, is there political bias within the Electoral Commission? Because it was a Labour ad, they sort of just brushed it aside. Would they have done that for all other parties? So they need to take these complaints more seriously. I believe there needs to be much harsher penalties, financial and publicity, for outlets that are breaking these rules. And if there is a caching issue here, and that's why these were showing still on election day, there should not be any caching of political ads. They should be served up dynamically. My 3rd personal submission is around the Manawatu Marae, which has received a lot of headlines lately, obviously. But we had the CEO, who was a sitting Te Pāti Māori candidate. There was food that was served, which is, in most voters' eyes, a clear breach of the treating rule. I know there's a high threshold to meet there. So look, my suggestions here are that we need to amend the Electoral Act so that we don't have these conflicts of interest in the future. We cannot have political polling booths connected to any political, party or individual in this way. I think we should ban the provision of all food and drink, apart from water, at any polling booth. We're there for a short time. We're there to vote. There's the risk of the challenge of being of bribery or potential bribery. If we do this, it only raises suspicion. We don't need it. Again, incredibly disappointed by the Electoral Commission. They just brushed this aside as a non-issue. I raised it straight away after elections and nothing was done. And now it's all coming back up in the media again. So again, when the public service brushes these things aside, it just, out here in voter land, we just feel like, is there political bias at play? I believe that a by-election should have been held, given all of the above at the time. Now, obviously, there's a new Manawatu Marae, Te Pāti Māori, Waipirira Trust inquiry that's out that may come up with some judgment like that too. But this was just really poor for a general election that we let this happen. I'm going to go into my 2 submissions now for the facts. And I'm moving quite quickly because I want to get through this and then, I welcome all questions at the end.
Yep, keep going.
Now, I'm, like many voters, I'm really surprised at how we still allow ads that hide the promoter's logo and name. The 2 on the right that you see there, a National New Zealand First ad, very clear who that's from. The one on the left, it's not clear at all. It's got in very small font, authorised by Rob Selmond. Most voters, maybe 95% plus, will go, who the hell is that? I've got no idea who's paid for this ad, who's behind it. It's an attack ad on National. So my belief is, and I approached the Electoral Commission on this, and they said, to change this, we need to change Section 204F of the Electoral Act so that the political organisation's name and logo must be on the ad, not just the promoters. So I believe that's a simple, good fix for elections going forward. And here's a really important one. And I want to spend a little bit more time on this because I don't think the media have grasped this. I've tried to share it with them, and I don't think the politicians I've shared this with understand it either. But as we all know, back in the day, if you were a mechanics, you'd call yourself AAA mechanics and you'd get at the top of yellow pages in the listings, you get more business. The same happens with all research. Every single poll, that if it's not randomized, the options at the top of the list and sometimes at the bottom get far more votes. Yet, despite all of this clear evidence over history, we still allow alphabetical listings on our general election ballot papers. And here's an example on the right-hand side. Simon Court's at the top. So if you're an Amy Adams, you've got a huge advantage over David Cunliffe, but actually both of them having surnames ABC have got a huge advantage over anyone else. Now, I want to use the example of the Auckland council elections to show just how crazy this alphabetical bias is. As you can see here from my mouse, 57%. So if we look at the Auckland local board members and licensing trustees, so this is 35 different elections, 428 candidates. So this is a lot of data. 57% of those elections were won by those who had surnames in the top 3 positions, all alphabetical rankings. They should have won on probability 30%. So they won twice as many as they were entitled to purely because of their surname.
Let's not change that.
And then over here, we've got 43%. So everyone else won 43%. So that's in positions 4 to 29 and an average of 12 candidates in each election, only won 43%. Now, this visual representation here, and I've got links to all of the data sources that you guys can click on later. You can see here, these are the winning candidates with the green markers. You can see the huge proliferation of people in first, second, and third position here that won their local body election. Hardly anyone through the middle and a couple at the end because you get another advantage of the last name. Now, over here, we see that same thing play out, that the Women's Rights Party, because they didn't have candidates in most electorates, are always listed last. They have an unfair advantage statistically because of our bias as how we vote. So what I would love to see going forward is that we need randomized ballot papers. About 50 out of 72 councils, is it? About 50 councils do have randomizations. Only 20, including Auckland, do not have randomization. So we need this for the general election in 2026. We need this for local elections in 2025. And like I said, if 50 out of 70 councils can do it, all councils can do it, and the parliament can do it as well. Oh. I also believe there's no need to align candidate names and party logos. In some electorates, this gives parties an unfair advantage. You can see here, X right at the top because Simon Court was at the top. And National and Multi-Party have an advantage because there's some white space around it. Some of these other parties down here get a bit more buried. So I believe that should be randomized. It doesn't need to be aligned. Voters do not need to go, okay, I'm voting for this candidate. Where's their party over here? We get 2 votes, candidate and party. Both lists should be randomized, in my view. And you've got the data source there. I'm happy to provide more information for anyone who's curious to dive into this closer. I've had a couple of additional ideas since submissions closed because they closed quite some time ago. The first is I think we need to confront media bias and the impact it has on our election voting. So 2/3 of journalists self-identify as left-wing. This is from the Worlds of Journalism study. I've got all the hyperlinks in the PowerPoint that you've all got. So this is really concerning. 2/3 left-wing, only 23% centrist. I would expect 80% plus journalists should have said they're centrist, and only 12% right. They self-admit, and that's over 300 journalists, that they are biased to the left. Our 2 largest state-funded broadcasters are seen as significantly politically left as well by citizens. So we've got Radio New Zealand plus 6% left-wing, One News, TVNZ plus 15% left-wing. So more concern around media bias. And I've done some initial research because we actually know how voters rate the political performance of every party. And we can do a weighted score based on the issues that they see as important to work out how they should have voted if they voted in line with performance. There is a massive difference. National Party members on the committee will be particularly interested that if voters voted based on how they rank political parties, you would get 50% of the votes. You don't. You're getting, 37% at the moment. And there's a 10 percentage point difference between the centre-left and centre-right. I mean, the centre-left parties on the committee, you won't be happy to see this, but if there was no voting bias, the centre-right would do better. And this has a major impact on election outcomes. The only solution I have for this is we need legislation. We need either a new Media Independence Act or we need to change the Broadcasting Act to help reinstate that journalistic and democratic integrity Citizens are trusting. You guys have all seen the stats. Only 1/3 of citizens trust the media now, and private media can do what they wish. But when taxpayer funding or state-owned media is involved, I think we need to ensure that they are very balanced and reflect the people's views out here. Really disappointing last election to see personal attack ads and divisive speech. We saw the Trump assassination attempt. We saw the councillor in Palmerston North just in the last sort of week that stories come out. He had a bullet shot through his ute door. It's getting really dangerous out here. It's not long before there is a politically motivated murder in New Zealand if this keeps going. So I believe we need to stop these kind of personal attack ads that lack facts. I don't know how this is possible. You guys are the experts here, but these are not serving our country well. This is just dividing us and making us more violent. We need much more prominent sponsors' name in the logos. This is from the Council of Trade Unions. Tiny little font. This should be big. Who's behind this? Who's paying for this? I don't know what legislation controls how unions operate, but I believe they should seek member approval. I've had many complaints from union members paying their fees, and they've got no control over which political parties get their money and donations and these personal attack ads. And they're disgusted that this goes on. So there needs to be some controls there. The Human Rights Act's been very vocal about this, but the Human Rights Commission and Race Relations Commissioner, who was Meng Foon, I don't know who it is now, if it still is, but they have really failed the country. When people come out and falsely use terms like racism and genocide, the HRC and Race Relations Commissioner should be straight out there in media, shutting this stuff down, saying that is not correct use, this is not racism, this is not genocide, and condemn that kind of language. I see the taxpayers unions come out very strongly with a campaign around this too. Now, we've got a real problem though, because our MMP system actually rewards parties for creating division and envy and for letting people further left and right and not bringing us together. We need a solution for this. I don't have the solution. I thought maybe we could actually change, and this won't happen, but it'd be amazing if we could downvote parties that we dislike, that we think are not good for New Zealand. But we do need a solution to try and not reward division. We need to punish division and parties that don't bring us closer together. We've got some ideas around seats. We have 120 plus MPs. I mean, 123 at the moment with the overhang. This is a high number and a higher cost for our country per capita than comparable democracies. And a massive 40% of these come from the party list. So I believe a better system might be 100 seats. So 1% just equates to 1 seat. Twice as many electorate seats as party list seats. So the people actually vote 2 to 1, those politicians in, a 2 to 1 ratio. I believe the party list rankings shouldn't just be decided by political parties, but they should be fully or partially determined by those citizen votes that they win. I believe every politician should run in an electorate, should listen to the people, hear the people, share their views with the people, not just sit on party list seats. So I don't quite, there's a few different ways to do this. It will be a little bit complicated, but then it means that the people have a say in who gets in off the party list seats. And I believe it's overdue that we need a public discussion on the multi-seats, how they operate. Do we keep them? Do we increase them? Do we remove them? If so, when? Voting, this arbitrary 5% party vote threshold to get in if you don't win an electorate seat. This is just totally made up by politicians. We've had no, and I guess, public service. The people have not had a say in this. I believe we need a democratic referendum. Is it the right amount? Is it too low? Is it too high? Is it just right? Single transferable vote seems like a no-brainer to me, given that arbitrary 5% party vote threshold, which I see as undemocratic. We have 6% votes wasted every election on average. So we should get a first, second, third party vote so that everyone's vote counts, and which is, in my view, the definition of a democracy. And I would like to see a formal protest vote too. So rather than just a spoiled ballot paper, etc. If you believe none of the parties or candidates are good enough, we should be able to say that to send a message to our parliament. We would like you to do better. Democratic representation. So we have a lot of unmandated, undemocratic, unpopular policies that have come through into legislation, proposed legislation and policies. Many popular ideas. And so on the flip side, many popular ideas have been attacked by biased left-wing media who are often state-owned and funded. I've listed many examples here. I won't go through them. You have this. But the solutions, I think there's 6. I think that everything that a political party suggests must have a mandate for change. Either you take it to the election as a very clear party policy before the elections with a good run-up, not just a few days before, run a referendum, or get some really robust polling to prove that people want this. I think I'd love to see more parliamentary-led referenda. We didn't have any last election, the time before we had the cannabis and the end-of-life choice bill, which was fantastic. The people got their say. We need more citizens-initiated referenda. We haven't had any since the sale of state assets, which is over a decade ago now, I think. I believe we need to drop the threshold from 10% of voters to 5%. That would then be consistent with the multi-ward referenda. We need consistency around what constitutes, what triggers a referendum. I think it's crazy that we have two different levels. We should allow digital signatures. It's 2024. It shouldn't have to be physical bits of paper. And this will be controversial, but I would love to see if you hit 10%, 15 or 20% of voters, then it's a binding referendum, not just an unbinding one. Love to see a direct democracy model like Switzerland, 3 to 4 times a year. The people get their say on multiple issues. There's a lack of trust from voters, increasing lack of trust from voters around politicians and their performance. I'd love to see 50% of any party's candidates or MPs having at least 5 to 10 years of private sector experience. There's a lot of career politicians and a lot of parties. I think we need more representation from, more diversity from what actually happens out here in society. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe every candidate should run in an electorate to achieve true democracy. Final few points. This crazy thing around fiscal cliffs that whoever's in party doesn't have to actually put in their budget going forward, some future spending figures like school lunches or Farm Act. This is just crazy. We can amend the financial rules and legislation so that doesn't happen leading into an election. Sorry to pick on you again, Labor, but in 2020, you released your manifesto 4 days before the election, as proven by the file creation date and website history. I believe every political party should release policies on all major portfolio areas at least 2-3 months before. Crazy situation here with Grant Robertson reappointing Adrian Orr for a 5-year term well beyond on the election. We need some kind of legislation that an outgoing government can't put their favourites in and entrench them in place for that long beyond an election. We have a major issue with vote buying, MMP democracy. It's hard to find solutions here, but I think the media bias plays a big role in this. So GST removal on fruit and veggies, just a really dumb idea to try and buy votes. And the media did slam that, so that was good. But there's many other examples. And finally, I know there's talk about increasing to a 4-year term. I firmly believe we need to keep it 3 years because we need to be able to kick you guys out within 3 if you don't do a good job. And I'll stop sharing. Oh, actually, I won't stop sharing. I'll leave it up in case anyone wants me to go back. Thanks for your time and thanks for listening. It's 9:21, so I know we haven't got much time or any.
No, I appreciate that, Geoff. You've run through a number of different ideas, which thank you. It's interesting because I think there's probably ideas in there that all of us agree with 1 or 2, and then probably some of us strongly disagree with 1 or 2 as well.
I made the private sector, so
thank you. The members in the room whose surnames Webb and Wade Brown might not be as agreeable, well, might be more agreeable, and the Brewers and the Arbuckles.
That was actually changed to Stop Act being at the top of the ballot paper because it was going to be on party name.
So any questions? We are eating into a break. Can I just have some quiet, please? We're eating into the break time, but we'll open up for questions from members because there's quite a lot to go through. So in order.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, just one real quick one, please, Geoff. Thanks, Geoff, for the presentation. With respect to the randomisation of the names, do you have access to any data that shows the effect of what you're suggesting, that if we do randomise as opposed to the data that you do have, the 57% won by people on the top? Do you have the kind of like the other side of the coin data?
Yeah, so I guess it's in my research, I'm a market researcher, right? And in market research world, it's just a no-brainer. You always randomise every poll, every survey. You have to, because this bias comes through. So we know this in the research world. I've got this great evidence for Auckland Council because I spent the time. Look, I'm a curious and concerned citizen, so I do all this for free. I don't get paid to do this. I could go through the election results and I could, I believe, prove that there is alphabetical bias in general elections, but I'm afraid I don't have the time to do it free.
Thank you.
But someone, hopefully there within Parliament, could run that analysis.
We'll go Cameron, then Celia, then Todd.
Thanks, Geoff. Thank you for your presentation. Just going back to the inquiry into the 2023 election, I know you've touched on Manawatu Marae, but are you able to give us a précis as far as any other kind of operational issues that you might have seen, or flaws or problems or challenges that you might have seen out of October's election on the day or prior or after, such as, and whether you have a view on same-day enrolment where 110,000 New Zealanders enrolled on the day, and whether you support that or not.
Yeah, I actually do have a view on this. I should have included it. I believe advanced voting happens way too far in advance. A lot can happen in an election. I believe voters need to be informed. So my first response is we should only have advanced voting like in a week. It should not be 2-3 weeks in advance. Things can change. Policies can come up, scandals can come up. So that's the first thought. In terms of rolling on election day, look, this is more an operational matter. You will know how that congested a lot of booths. I did a special vote from Hamner Springs. I was there for a family early Christmas, and it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. It took maybe half an hour, and I don't know what slowed that all down. So anything that can speed up the process on voting day, I believe we should be enrolling. Yes, we should enroll. I'm going to leave that to you guys, but we should be voting closer to voting day, and it should be a lot faster in the booths.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Celia
Thank
Brown.
thank you, Chair. I was just interested in your thoughts about whether journalists would actually be more informed than the general public, and that might account for their centre-left leaning.
Or are voters more informed than the media? We could look at it the other way. Look, I think media bias is a massive issue. I'm actually producing a series of statistics. If any of you are interested, I'm speaking at a number of events, and part of a few things around media bias. It's got really bad. I mean, anyone who watched One News last night, man, how many attack stories were there on the government? How many left-leaning stories were there?
How
Stuff
many
the night
problems
before.
are there?
You know, it's bad, and we have to fix it.
Thank you, Geoff. Any other?
Questions? Go on there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate your contribution, your submissions. We're very close to considering all the input and starting to form our report. So hopefully, if you'll see a few of your issues aired in the report when it comes out in a few weeks' time. So thank you, Geoff.
Great. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.